You've written, Dr. Lucy Sixsmith, you've written a book you've titled When the Music Fades. I think anyone that is connected to Soul Survivor will immediately know what that means and what that relates to. The subtitle you placed there was A Soul Survivor Generation. And when I've read your book, thank you for sending it, and it's brilliant.
You're reading it.
I think everyone should buy it, of course. I think the stuff that it brought out in me was you started unravelling some of the complexity that I hadn't really thought about. The complexity of being in a more charismatic church, and I had different experiences from Anglican, Baptist and house church stuff when I was growing up, but each of those three were quite familiar. You brought together a sort of you brought your story together with a formation that I'd missed some of the detail of, and actually the detail is what I'm trying to do in these videos.
Yeah.
So I think starting with understanding why you and I are at Soul Survivor Generation is really important, and I think that's where a lot of people watching this will identify with it too, whether it's them themselves, whether it's their kids, or it would be a little bit sort of remiss of us not to say it might be the new generation too. So we'll cover that at the end. But let's talk about your book.
Should we unpack that phrase a bit? So exactly as you say, as I was writing it, one of the sort of audiences I guess I had in mind was that cohort of people of about my age, so 30s, 40s now, but who went through youth groups and churches and Soul Survivor festivals, I guess in the 90s and noughties and round about the turn of the millennium. And I guess I had that sense of there's going to be lots of us out there in our different lives that we now have, but having been shaped by a charismatic past, whether it was Soul Survivor or something similar, although the book kind of was centred around Soul Survivor. And I used the word generation almost in quotation marks because I feel like at that time, and you were saying just moments ago, maybe it was almost related to the turn of the millennium. There was such a sense of, this is a chosen generation, this is revival generation, this is a dancing generation, was another song.
Not just even this is, so you're like to personalise it, you were the chosen generation, which is like even saying it to you like that, I'm like, God, it's so loaded.
And to put that load on teenagers is what I was interested in. So I had in mind those people who are now, how do you go from you're 16 and you think you're called to change the world and be a history maker and be the revival generation, and then you become a normal grown-up. And what does that do to someone's development? What does that do to your brain and just how you act in the world? And what do we do now in all our different, this will be people in church, out of church, on the edge of church, in church but not evangelical anymore. I'm conscious I keep looking towards the camera, but I'll try not to.
Let's ignore it. It's boring.
It's.
I want to be more interested in the camera.
It's because I'm kind of going everywhere trying to think these things through. So one audience is all of those people out there who might all kind of feel on their own because they're not necessarily somewhere where people around them are talking about these things.
Well,
I wanted to kind of find them.
I don't have any friends now who I can talk. So in some ways, I'm making these videos so I can have conversations about it. Because I don't have friends who get this really.
Because everyone's moved on, and maybe it's like distant past for some people, and it might be that for a lot of people, hearing about Mike Pilavachi and those allegations that came out in 2023, and then the investigations. Will have stirred up something that there might not be a space to talk about it. So I kind of wanted to give voice to what it was like to be that 15, 16-year-old, but in a way where someone reading it will also be thinking over their own memories, which might not be exactly like mine. But nonetheless, there's a kind of a space there to go back to that time. Equally, as you've said, there's no clear edge around a generation. If we talk about a generation, there are no edges on that. And that charismatic world that we were in, well, our youth leaders were in it, our parents were in it. All of this stuff will also have affected at different times people of other ages, and then all of I'm not in charismatic churches myself now to know what it's like, but those churches are still going on and having their own history, so there probably are children and teenagers who are facing, if not the same experiences that we encountered, then something similar. So I was kind of also interested in raising questions, I guess. I'd like the book to be something that if someone's in youth ministry now, they might use it as a space to kind of reflect on what should a festival look like.
And to your point as well, not just what a festival looks like, but this idea of the quiet revival. The vicar I spoke with yesterday, Luke, he was saying the young men, some of which are working age as well, not just you sort of young people, but they're returning to church, or they're coming to church for the first time. There's a spiritual desire in them. So I think also your book would highlight some of the practices and culture that was established and normalised, and question that. The thing I think, and we might come back to generation, because I think it's a strong one, the promise that hasn't been realised by a number of people. I'm not dancing.
Not dancing upon injustice. And,
no.
Yeah.
I care a lot about it. That sense of generation, I think we might get back to, but let's look at the sort of main title. So when the music fades, why call it that? Because again, when I say loaded, for me, I mean, you can say, I can read those words, let alone say it, and the melody that Matt Redman wrote comes to mind immediately. It was such a corporately, he led a corporate response to a culture that he was responsible for starting. So, and you writing it, I'm like, hang on, we haven't even dealt with it. It didn't even do it, and we're still talking about it. So why did you call it that?
I actually can't take credit for it. So someone at the press.
Oh, really?
My original title was the word dignified, because I was thinking about the other song, I'll Become Even More Undignified Than This.
Right. That's interesting.
And I wanted to flip that on its head and say, well, what's wrong with dignity? And that was going to link in with Power, Surrender, the Soul Survivor Generation as the subtitle. And the press, I think quite rightly, said people aren't going to get that. That's not kind of resonant enough.
Yeah.
How about When the Music Fades? And I had a qualm because there was a blog post that circulated in 2023 that was also called Where the Music Fades. And I thought, oh no, Chris Bullivant is going to think I've stolen his title.
Right.
Because it was a very, very good reflection on Soul Survivor. So people can read that article as well. But I think that choice, and then people's reactions as I've been telling them about the book, it is one of those phrases that stirs that sense of what worship was like for any of us who were able to just sing that song with wholehearted commitment.
Well,
but to then have that sense of this isn't what it was, or I'm not sure, or I'm there's some disappointment, or it kind of opens up all sorts of possibilities for ways in which the music might have faded for different people.
Interesting, but let's go into, that's really insightful. So you would have named it something else, and I get...
That was my first thought,
so let's go with your first thought, because I think in some respects, after reading your book, that makes a little bit more sense in terms of, whether it's talking about on the stage in Wembley, whether it's the song itself, and I mean, I remember in the festivals, that's I Will Become Even More Undignified than This, the sort of the mimic or the storytelling of David dancing. You reflect really interestingly on that biblical text and also how the song was used. So talk to me about dignity, because I don't feel
and it does tie in with
When
the Music Fades, because those are both examples of quite a lot of songs, both coming out of Soul Survivor and other churches as well, that I think of as surrender songs. Right. We had a lot of music that was I'm laying myself down, I'm laying down my life, I'm laying down my heart.
And I speak with Mark James actually about his song.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
That was one of the big surrender
it's
songs.
A massive song.
Yes, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I've always loved those songs. And I
no. You don't like Mark? I'm not going to throw my attention to the corner because he's a lovely guy, but everyone should be able to take criticism.
So I think what's interesting about them is I can remember, I don't know when, but probably before the recent Soul Survivor news, starting to think, I've sung these songs so many times. I've said to God, I surrender to you so many times. Did it work? Or am I just singing the songs again and again?
Yeah.
Like there's just surrender again and again. And did God do anything? Like, is my life shaped by God, or am I just singing the song? That was the kind of a question in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think then, through the safeguarding investigation into Mike Pilavachi, we started to learn more about what the songwriters had experienced in terms of spiritual abuse, emotional bullying, all of the stuff that has been set out in those investigations. Those song lyrics then sound completely different. And not all of the surrender songs are written by people that I know anything about. Like some of them are, there's a songwriter somewhere.
Yeah.
But the ones where I know that it's written by Matt Redman or just it's come out of the Soul Survivor world, maybe.
Yeah.
At that point, I found myself starting to question, is it healthy to be singing, I'll become even more undignified than this? Or I'm humbled by your mercy and I'm broken inside. Well, it's one thing if it really is by God's mercy.
Yeah.
But it's another thing if you've been broken by the people who are meant to be your colleagues and the institution you're part of.
Or mentors.
Exactly.
Father
people
figures.
That you look up to, people that were meant to be friends.
Yeah.
And once those questions are in your mind, that you can't sing that worship song anymore. And you might say, well, it's just a song. Like, can you not detach the song from the structure and make it a song to God anyway? But I think for me, I started thinking, well, how do you know whether the surrender that we thought was kind of directly to God, at what point have you surrendered to God, and at what point have you surrendered something to an institution or a culture or like a human space where you shouldn't actually have needed to let that go because there should have been more protection or self-protection. Sorry, you.
No. So, so would you suggest then those songs that we'd sing, and whether it's among 3,000 other kids our own age, or whether it's as we learn them on the guitar as you play as well, or whether we're playing in the little church or big church, whatever we're involved with, that's sort of, I don't know, grooming us into an attitude or into a theology, or so explain a little bit, like, because I think understanding and thinking about the context that something was made or written is pretty unusual within the evangelical charismatic space. It's
and I want this to be asking questions rather than kind of insisting on an answer or a particular perspective.
Okay,
you know, if someone is
maybe tell me a little bit about your experience of those songs then. And so, what was your experience of singing those? So I mentioned a little bit I can remember, but for people that didn't experience that, what was important about it for you then to think about the context of it?
Yeah. I think it's hard to put into words what worship means, which is kind of why I wanted to write about it. That's sort of part of the work of the book, I suppose, is to try to capture that experience of, whether it's in the crowd or just worshipping by yourself. But the kinds of things that we used to express with gestures, like if you've got your arms in the air, there's that sense of I'm completely open to the creator of the universe. There's that sense of the sense that worship matters more than anything else you could possibly do, that you're lifting your eyes to like beauty beyond beauty, and that your whole self as a person, like everything about you, is kind of open to this superlative beyond superlatives. There's something so compelling about it.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's yeah, I wonder now whether there might be risks there. When you, especially when you have a very young person, if you're doing that at 14, 15, 16, when you haven't really learned how to be a person yet, like you're very much, you think you're all grown up, but you're still learning like how to do basic things in the world and what your skills are and how to manage human relationships and how to get on with your family and what job you might do and how to make a telephone call. Like I kind of think back and think I was saying, yes, God, use me to change the world, at a point where I was terrified to make a telephone call and just had no clue about anything and had never had a job or and anything that I say, I can imagine someone turning around and saying, that doesn't make sense, why does that matter? Because I'm finding it very difficult to put into words. But the kind of the point of the book was, can I try and put this into words? Is that moment of surrender actually good?
And there goes the dog. So
and if it is happening within an institutional context,
is
to what extent is it actually being controlled, shaped? Is something kind of being taken from you by something that's human? When you say, I'm giving myself to God, but if the experience is kind of being elicited from you by someone who knows how to use their voice over the microphone to get that emotional response from you, at that point you haven't given yourself to God, you've been manipulated. And I don't want to be the person who sits there and says that was definitely happening, because people will have different experiences and it's only on the level of that's how it now feels looking back. And as a book to try, I guess, to reach people who are having similar questions, open up conversations about that and be challenged. You know, I want people to criticise it. I think I want people to criticise it. As I say, I don't currently go to charismatic evangelical meetings.
No.
But for those people who are still involved in that and thinking about how to do it in a way that's healthy, it would be really interesting for them to read the book and then kind of come back with what are they doing. And that stuff could all be there, and I may have just not found it because I was so stuck in my memories of the 90s and noughties. But
I wonder if, like, we were talking in the car when we came back from the station, that you were saying in some ways has enough time passed in order for people to be able to, the way that you were writing, I felt quite able to hear what you were saying because I'm also able to view it objectively, and not through a lens of like the habitual Sunday service, the midweek small group, the kind of prayer night, the men's night, the morning bike ride. I wasn't reading it in the spaces I had left of the church rhythm. What was one of the other aspects? I think we're sort of shaping how we're talking at the moment. But the other aspect I really wanted to speak with you was what it meant to be a woman within this context, or a girl first.
A girl.
And actually, within that generation, chosen generation, it's being a girl, right? It's not being a woman; it's about being a girl. So one of the chapters you write about purity culture, and we've made a video on that, which was really insightful for me, because I think we were just kept at arm's length all the time. Boys and girls were separate. I mean, in school, like the sex talk was always separate. I think it was. I don't really remember. But with the purity culture, it was like it took that to another level, but made it about everything. And you spoke about in the Soul Survivor Festival the Soul Sister and I forgot what the boys' version was.
Soul Man was the boys' version.
I'm not sure I went.
I kind of wonder how many boys did when there was like the skate park. And,
exactly. That's what you said. And I think, so when we're talking about the music being having this opportunity perhaps to manipulate, this was perhaps more decided It was more sort of, you know what I mean?
More calculated.
Calculated.
Yeah. So one thing I would say is that chapter where I got onto Soul Sister and the kind of being a woman in that space was where I was most conscious of, I can only say how it was for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women and girls. We're 50% a kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would never be like, I can speak for all women, that's fine. And especially when it's things like sex and relationships and that kind of aspect of human development. I think people will have had such varied experiences and really, really hurtful experiences. So you kind of want to tread really carefully. This is how it was for me. It ended up being a section where I felt it was important to talk about how Soul Survivor sort of rocked up and said, it's time to do the sex talk.
Yeah.
Both in those separate Soul Sister, Soul Man seminars and also on the main stage.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a bit of a medley of a chapter because I talked about Soul Sister and kind of other aspects of how in those spaces people talked and thought about men and women and the kind of pressure of this is how men are, this is how women are.
Yeah.
You walk into the Soul Sister meeting and you remember that cross over the stage that's like lit up from inside and it would be pink for the Soul Sister seminars.
Yeah, right.
Which means that you walk in and maybe you think, oh, they've changed it for us, this is really great. Or you walk in and think, oh, I'd actually like pink. They're trying to force me to be a particular kind of girl.
Yeah.
So that's kind of lumped into that chapter, but it was kind of, it ended up being an opportunity to think, why did we not question a random accountant standing on stage talking about sex to thousands of teenagers? Because that's Mike Pilavachi's original training was in accountancy.
Yeah, right.
But by the time it's Mike Pilavachi, we say, oh, I guess it's fine. He's a youth leader. He's a pastor. He'll do it in a pastoral way. But actually, who really has the right or the training to suddenly launch into, and this is everything you need to know about not having sex in that context, because it was the very famous cake in the fridge talk, which I'm sure a lot of people listening will be like, oh yeah, the fridge talk.
Yeah, people remember, and you remembered it very clearly. I don't remember it. So, what? Why was it so significant? Because it seems to.
I think it's stuck in a lot of people's heads.
Okay.
Because. I'm sorry, I'm trying to summarise this chapter and it's getting a little vague.
No, you put so much work into it. Now I'm just.
So the fridge talk was, and it's just so gross if you get into it. It all came back to don't open the fridge door, as in like, you know, you're boys and girls who are growing up and figuring out your sexuality, and the best way to deal with it, this is me summarising it, putting an interpretation on it.
Yeah.
It came across, I think, as just shut it all down, don't go anywhere near it, because bad things might happen.
Yeah.
Which you can imagine is a great way to make people feel hugely guilty, hugely condemned, hugely scared. There's no good way to come out of that. And I guess I was interested in that you can really harm kids by saying, well, the message is just to close the door, slam everything shut, don't go there. It's not, sex is bad.
Yeah.
It would also be quite bad if we were like, let's talk to teenagers about sex the whole time.
Yeah.
The most dangerous person is the person who wants to talk to teenagers about sex the whole time. So why did we think it was okay to have that sex talk in the first place? Like, what went wrong with our instincts?
Yeah.
So it kind of became a bunch of thoughts about how to think through, like, intellectually, making a risk assessment of a situation, but also noticing when your body is saying that maybe this isn't safe, maybe this isn't right.
Right.
In contrast to a kind of purity culture kind of teaching where it was just like, sex is bad.
Yeah.
As long as you steer well clear, then everything will be fine.
And if you and to be really like patently clear about it, a lot of people wouldn't have just steered clear of it. So.
And then they're feeling awful and they have no actual guidance. And
I mean, I did AIDS training in South Africa, and we were doing it to kids as young as 9 and 10. So if that same message, and Soul Survivor did go to South Africa, if that same message was speaking to them, I mean, how tone deaf?
Yes, you need these things to come from people who are like really have the right to be talking about those things and the knowledge. And I don't even know how to put into words what it should be because I'm not that person. I'm just a person who was in the crowd saying we should have noticed there was an issue.
Yeah. There's like a laziness that you're highlighting, and that I hadn't thought about before. So, and I remember that was almost encouraging. Like, I don't need to be an expert. I just need to have good intentions. And that seems to be very,
Yes, so, or God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called, or something like
horrible.
that.
Be better, not bitter. And we can go for those.
Yeah, all of the phrases. And almost a sense of, particularly at the festivals, I mean, maybe in churches as well, but if you create a summer festival, one of the striking things about Soul Survivor was making this space that teenagers really enjoyed.
Yeah.
It's fun to go to the skate park and stay up all night, and but it kind of then doesn't quite seem like the real world.
No.
At which point you don't necessarily notice a risk if you're like, well, why is this former accountant talking about sex to teenagers? That doesn't match up. But because it's not real, it's just it's a summer festival. It's kind of in this glossy.
And not that even whether it's real or not. I think you're absolutely right from a child's point of view. It's just like holiday world. Like what goes on in holiday or whatever that stays on holiday in a positive way.
And you're having a mountaintop experience, and it's all kind of shiny and lovely.
But equally, the culture had this, rather than it being shiny and perfect, although that increased, I think, as I stopped getting involved as a youth worker, taking young people there, there was this sort of, you mentioned about, you can't see on the camera, but like there's bits all over the table because I'm prepping for tomorrow. What you were saying, people like the kind of realness, the authenticity of podcasts on YouTube, things like that.
Bit rough around the edges,
which I managed too well. But that was the nature of Soul Survivor too, especially in the early stages.
Yes.
Everything felt very reachable and tangible. So if there was this chap who was sort of self-effacing, who hadn't looked in the mirror before he went on stage, everything else, well then he's more trustworthy. If there was a band on the stage that they played well, but they weren't like, oh my goodness, those musicians are incredible. Like you get in sort of Pentecostal music. I mean, we had, I've forgotten the band, Iona. You're probably too young to see them, but they were this Scottish band, Celtic kind of Christian band. The drummer for them was just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Kevin Prosh played one year, probably again before your time. And those musicians were phenomenal. So there was that bit in me that was like, wow, as an aspiring musician, that was incredible. But that wasn't the main tone of Soul Survivor. The main tone was, you can skate if you can get on a skateboard. You don't need to be the best. You can be part of this. You can go and do an open mic. You don't need to be brilliant, but you've just, I don't know, I can't remember, but the open mic probably was someone singing a Matt Redman song. Or at least a Delirious, which we can talk about next. Actually, this is a good segue into Delirious. But this whole kind of, the whole week was this like real, authentic experience of Christianity. And so why couldn't he speak about sex? Because he was real and authentic. He didn't need to be an expert. That's the negative space, or the negative space in that is what you're looking at.
Yeah, a kind of a sense of Soul Survivor had celebrities, but we didn't notice because we thought it was just kind of, a giant youth group for the whole country, and everything seemed very down to earth, and so your experience of it was as this kind of real, almost kind of homely. That was a sort of going home to Soul Survivor feeling almost, where there's maybe a risk in that because despite that there is a putting of people on pedestals, and this odd dynamic of an organisation being looked to as an example of great youth work, whilst also having this mythology of this whole thing was crazy, but it was God. So it.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's something that's pretty specifically British, I think. So, and it becomes muddied when we bring in our experiences that were brought over from America.
Yeah.
If we just continually look at Soul Survivor, I think, for this conversation, because it is really different.
But all things that get mixed up, and I mean, you mentioned Delirious, who were more celebrities.
They were
in a more slightly more obvious like.
Well, we were allowed to see them as being, with a small R, Rockstars.
Yeah.
Where we couldn't see Matt Redman as that. There was this.
Yeah.
And I don't know who made that distinction or how we managed to do it, because we sang along to Delirious songs.
Yeah, and the Delirious gig felt like a worship.
He didn't give prophetic words. I don't know if you remember being in.
I don't remember that happening, but I can remember it feeling like a.
We'd all sing.
Yeah.
They'd stop playing sometimes. We'd all sing as like a large chorus of teenagers.
Yeah.
But I remember in the Brentwood Centre, in Essex,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have been the mid-90s probably, and he gave prophetic words to people.
Interesting.
So it was a worship gig.
Yeah, and it would
when
have
you say
seemed,
examining what worship is, I think this is
and at the time it would have seemed almost like a good and positive sense of like we can worship
in a gig,
but we're also enjoying the music, and isn't it cool that the drummer has like glow in the dark. That was the World Service toy, had glow in the dark drumsticks at one point,
really?
and you're like, that's so cool. But it seemed like a way to integrate them. Did you ever do? We all need to buy the Deeper single to try and get them into the top 10 on Top of the Pops.
Yeah, I think when I was involved in the youth group, I think we all did. And did they get on Top of the Pops? I don't remember.
I can't remember.
But we all bought. I remember.
But it meant that there was
and they put out 2, if you remember. So you could buy 2 singles. One had different B-sides on. So if you're,
I don't remember that.
I think I had 2. And they weren't cheap. They were like £4.50 or something for a single.
So just to sort of even in Britain, we had a bit of a mixture of different ways of doing Christian celebrity
and commercialising worship.
Yeah, and different ways of seeing. In which moments is it a worship leader that we all need to make loads of jokes about to rubbish him because otherwise he might get above himself? That was kind of the Soul Survivor.
Right. So that was the distinction, do you think?
I mean, it's just how it looks. I mean, all of this is just like how it looks to me.
So what was your view? What was the difference between sort of Matt Redman and co, Tim Hughes, and then Delirious? What was what was the distinction? Because you made a bit of a distinction.
And just kind of as handy examples, because I think Delirious were involved in the early days of Soul Survivor. The Soul Survivor,
so. They would do the worship evenings in the cattle shed. Yeah.
So the culture that I remember from the Soul Survivor festivals I went to. So again, it's just what I remember.
Yeah.
But I have this sense that because there was this culture of, like the onstage jokes, like we've got to make a joke about how the album cover says, "Here I am to worship Tim Hughes." So we've got to make a joke about that. Right. Otherwise, Tim will get above himself. And so we kind of have to make jokes about that.
And what do you mean by get above himself?
That was the narrative, I think. That was kind of the onstage persona. Do you remember the thing about it? Somewhere in one of the programmes one year, there was a printed question that said, "Why does Mike always make fun of people on stage?"
No.
And it circulated at one point online that kind of in like the seminar programme in the FAQ for the week there was I don't understand why Mike is so mean to everyone else on stage.
Right.
And the explanation was, well, they're all friends. This is just part of the banter, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have noticed at the time. I think I would have accepted it. Personally, would have thought, okay, yeah, it's banter. It's going in all directions. But with hindsight, looking back, I wonder about this sense of a culture of making jokes about the worship leaders. Not just from Mike, but in general. When I watched the 2002 DVD back, it's both jokes and a lot of sort of the musicians could so easily be celebrities and we need to make a big point about how it's all about God. It's all about God. It's all about God.
Yeah.
Which kind of sounds healthy. Until you start to think, are we only doing this about the musicians and like the younger proteges, the trainees? I don't remember anyone ever saying, Mike as the preacher needs to be really careful, because as a preacher you could start to feel like a celebrity. And I feel, looking back, I feel like it was a culture of things that were said to musicians where, so that you end up with Matt Redman writing When the Music Fades about, it's all about Jesus, we're humble before him. Part of me is still like, that still sounds really good. But also, if you write a really good song, maybe you should be allowed to be pleased with yourself for writing a really good song. There's some kind of irony there of like, and maybe at some point Matt Redman did go home and think, I'm tough with myself about when the Music Fades. That's, it's a song that churches will take up and lots of people will be able to sing it and make it their own. And, it's really easy to play and sing, so it's very congregation friendly. And I did a good job there. Maybe he did, but I kind of wanted to ask the question of like, what kinds of humility are healthy?
Yeah. So when someone reads your book, what are you hoping that, the different people, you might want to sort of say some of the different people that you can imagine reading it, but what are you wanting them to experience or think or how are you wanting to encourage or challenge them?
So I want it to be, part of me just wants it to be fun to read. I hope it'll be something that people will, have a nice time reading. Yeah. That's kind of the basis of any writing. I hope that people in that Soul Survivor generation, or what I think of as the history makers, people who've gone through this, singing the Delirious song, I'm going to be a history maker in this land, and now we're being normal adults. I hope that people in that camp will feel recognised, but also I hope I've kind of allowed space for each reader having had their own different story. People won't remember it exactly the way that I remember it. So I've tried to say, this is how it feels to me now, or this is what I saw, thought, felt, in a way that leaves room for the person reading to think, well, it wasn't quite like that for me, but my story matters too, because we're just like people who were there. I wasn't important. Most people there were just people in the crowd. I hope those people read it and feel both acknowledged and have a kind of space to do some thinking and processing and maybe have conversations with each other about it.
God,
that's one of the categories.
Yeah, that one. I'm not being fair. I'm not being fair. Closing
No,
down.
go for it. I'm rambling.
That thing of you not being important. It's really that for me is something I've heard a lot when I've spoken with people about Soul Survivor. They've had, whether they were first-hand kind of spiritually abused within the context, or whether they were people that were in the festival. That not important language is so prevalent. And like, as soon as you like live a life a little bit outside of church, in your successes, in my successes, you just think, well, none of them were important. As in, and when I say,
what do I even mean by important?
Well, no, but it's such.
I could try to unpack that a bit.
No, but the language is really important. I'm trying, and so the way I say none of them are important is not none of the measure is wrong. Is what I mean. The them and us, the on the stage and off the stage, the listen to and the person that doesn't even have a voice. All of that was so focused upon, to the extent that now I'm mid-40s, you're mid-30s, you're thinking that still has an imprint as much as the generation thing. Yeah. And it's almost as if the promise of being the revival generation within that framework. As in, are you important within that revival generation, or are you unimportant within that? Oh, it's really heavy. Yeah. So when someone reads your book, what I did was it enabled me to sort of untangle a bit of this bird's nest. And it was great to read it, seeing it through your viewpoint. It enabled me to think, hang on, this scale, which still influences the back of my mind when I'm considering faith, when I'm considering church, when I'm considering Christian friendships, when I'm considering how I talk with other people about Christianity, which I do all the time. I did on a call this morning with a colleague. It just came up. It does, like it always does. Faith always does. Yeah. But how much of that has been shoehorned into a generation, into an importance, into...
Going to be a history maker.
You're going to be a history maker.
Yeah.
Well...
It's a lot of pressure.
It's not just a lot of pressure, because then loads of us just opt out. Like the proper midlife crisis of mine has been, well, does any of it matter? You know, like Bob Geldof, his version was, is that it? And I definitely fit. And you apply that to, like, to this Christian promise or prophecy that was, it was all that was said.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole leaning of the entire festival was this promise.
Yeah. At a point where you probably haven't learnt yet how to make basic life decisions for yourself about what you want to do work-wise. Like,
No,
it's a learning process to work out how to articulate what you want.
Yeah.
If you hijack that with, God wants this amazing, wonderful, shiny thing for your life.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I've slightly forgotten how this connects, but I was about to say it a moment ago.
Yeah.
I was thinking on the train on the way down about the moment in the Gospels with the widow's mite, but not in relation to financial giving. So that the widow who brings along her 2 pennies, and it's not half as much as what everyone else is giving, but Jesus says it's all she had to live on. She's given everything. And I was thinking about it in relation to people who have been in churches and to the leaders, to the institution, maybe looked like, well, that person was just there. Maybe they did a little bit. They were involved. They've moved on, and the institution is still just doing its own thing, moving on. But that person who seems unimportant to the institution might have given everything in terms of their personhood and their emotions and their spiritual life and what they've invested their money and thought and time and teenage development in. They might, as I say, I can't quite remember why I started talking about that.
I get
but that
it.
sense of like, do we realise the stakes when people go to church?
But also, do you realise what the gospel means? That it is upside down. That Jesus did die for her. And did eventually die for her. Did see her giving. Did see her heart. And that's the generation. That's the follower. That's the disciple. And that's the church. That for me, like, I'm getting all preachy. But like that for me is the language and the conversations that I have now. It's not, wow, do you play guitar? You could be on a stage. You could be really influential.
It's
you could
more
talk,
like
you could talk to
normal
3,000 people about sex. I'm not saying that no one wants that.
Yeah.
That's not what these Jordan Peterson fans are going into church asking the questions about. They're asking it because they don't see hope in the rest of the world at the moment. Yeah,
and then not to object to the preaching, but I think then there's also people who
object to it.
who were just too hurt. Like, they've given all they had to live on, and they're never going to be in church again.
Right.
And from my point of view, as I was writing the book, I kind of saw it all as the same group almost. So I've always had this kind of imaginary extra bit to the parable of the prodigal son. So there's the brother who stays at home, there's the brother who comes back, there's the party happening. And for a long time I've liked to imagine like that round the edge of the father's estate, somewhere around the edge there's like a scrappy bit of land where you can't really grow anything and it's a bit rubbish and it's kind of near the edge. And so you can't really tell where the border is between the father's land and not the father's land.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a bunch of people who are kind of hanging out there. And probably for some of them, it's really important to still say, I'm on the father's land. Like, I'm in the church, I'm making it work, there's the gospel here that I care about. But in some ways, they're not that far away from someone who's outside. Mm-hmm. Because there's similar stories and similar kinds of hurt and similar struggles. And I've said all of that, I'm not quite sure but that's the cohort I have in mind of where there's an in and an out and people who are kind of going, am I in, am I out? I don't really know.
That's where I sit.
Yeah.
So that's,
yes.
And so I sit there and I have a friend called David, and Dave's a musician. He made an album called Hinterland, and he's a Christian. He's currently training as a curate, and he wrote this album called Hinterland. It's got some fantastic musicians on board, and I'll put a link to it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, but he played some gigs in a few different venues, and I went to the one in London. And he told me what the album was about. We chat fairly regularly. He told me what the album was about, and I don't think there's any singing, I don't think. But I knew what it was about, I knew the tone, and it got me. Well, there were only 20 of us, or it's kind of like, it was like an industry thing, and I happened to go because I was his mate. And it got me. I was like, yeah, I'm there. I'm in that kind of neither one thing nor the other. And yet the majority of people I hang out with are the same. Maybe it's because I don't go to church, but even the people that I do speak to, who are even church leaders, they feel like they're there too. And this inner circle, and you don't write about this so much because you write it from a position of going to the festival, but the people who are really embroiled in Soul Survivor and now are perpetuating the culture at HCB plants and various other things, there's this inner circle that is where the chosen generation or the revival generation feel like they've made it. But Jesus doesn't come for them. We don't see him interacting with them in the Bible. And when he does, he turns over their tables. The book that you write, and I wanted to say to you in a text message, I can say it to you in person, but like as I was getting near to the end, it was beautiful. The way that you were writing about your faith, it really, in the same way that David's speaking about the hinterland with his music, I thought, the way you wrote about that hinterland was the same. And
Thank you.
Jesus meets us there. That's what, and the question is that we're all asking. But the question we're all asking is, Jesus, were you there in that inner circle?
Yeah. And maybe it's worth saying, like, I wrote it hoping that there would be other books.
Yeah. But
because there'll be people with stories who, I mean, you did was it Soul Time when you did it? You did the Soul Survivor. Like, there'll be people who have been closer into the inner circles of Soul Survivor, all the other organisations that there are.
Yeah.
And there'll be people of different ages and just people with a different take or a different set of skills.
Yeah.
For all of us who have been through some kind of charismatic or evangelical, whatever, or are still trying to figure out how to do youth ministry, because that would be the other audience, people who are still involved thinking it through, but want a kind of space to think about it.
Yeah.
There need to be recorded conversations and books and all the different voices on it. So, I'm not. This isn't like the authoritative. This is what needs to be said about Soul Survivor forevermore. This was kind of like I wanted to think something through, and I hope it might feed into someone else's book or podcast or film or something.
I think if I was to sell it, I'd say that you are very real, and I don't know. It just doesn't. There's a clanging. With we're questioning the unreality, or we're questioning the validity of our experience. You wrote something that was very personal and very real. I'm surprised I just got emotional talking about it, really. But I think that idea of the prodigal son and that hint. I mean, the prodigal son. I don't want to try and theologically reflect on it. It's your kind of thing, but. It's interesting why I became emotional then. It's still massively in me, otherwise I perhaps wouldn't be bothering making these.
Yeah.
But I'm bothering making these because I also feel like that is a reflection of so many conversations that I've had, and you see in the tweets and you see in people that are... And I don't know if you've noticed, but people have gone really quiet now again from Soul Survivor.
Again, it's just not knowing where all the people are. People who had this experience as a teenager could be anywhere now.
But there are thousands of us. There are tens of thousands of us. And have we just put it to the back of our mind like Boys Brigade, thinking, cool, that was a bit weird. We didn't have fire tunnels in Boys Brigade,
right?
Or the equivalent of whatever. What did we do in Soul Survivor that was weird? I mean, there were so many weird things, like the laughing and the crying and the wobbling and the ducking or whatever you'd call it.
Yeah.
The attempt at healing abuse in individuals by public prayer.
It's just in one evening, because that.
Yeah, you'll be done now.
Yeah.
This is the power of the revival generation.
Yeah, which sort of comes back to, you said something earlier about the sense of timescales, and like if there is a kind of a big moment of news, as with the Mike Pilavachi investigation, what then is the timescale on people thinking that through, bearing in mind that they're all in different places when it happens, you know. I've lost the thread there.
Well, no.
Maybe we should link this to the recent news,
that's exactly
which
where my mind went. And that's wrong-footed us right from the beginning. So we'd planned to have a chat, but this was before the St Albans Diocese have said this is a great idea to invest £3 million into from the main church fund. I'm not an expert in this stuff either. You're not an expert in...
No, so maybe we should fill anyone in who hasn't been online to notice.
Yeah, great.
So there was, I guess for both of us, it was like a seeing it on social media thing.
Well, no, I was sent it.
Or
actually.
okay,
Augustine sent it to me.
Because it was a Church Times article that I saw first.
So my vicar friend.
Gets the Church Times.
Yeah, exactly.
So the news was that St Albans Diocese, which is where Soul Survivor Watford is located, so obviously the festival stopped, but the church.
Yeah.
St Albans Diocese had put in a funding bid for grant money through the Strategic Mission and Ministry Investment Board. And the news was some of this grant money being awarded to the diocese, and in the bid for funding, they'd kind of put forward Soul Survivor Watford as a model or like an example of a growing church in the diocese.
Yeah.
And part of the goal for what to spend the money on was church planting and revitalisation. So I think some of the churches they mentioned had existing links with Soul Survivor Watford.
Yeah.
But it's kind of at that point that my eyes start to glaze over, because I don't know how Anglican diocesan funding applications work. So that's where I don't want to get into that. It's not my area of expertise.
And but what is our area of expertise is our experience from Soul Survivor Mark 1. And so what were you going to say?
Just from that wider culture, I guess.
Well, from our experience. In the sort of,
and yours directly with Soul Survivor.
Well, same as you. So Pilavachi set Soul Survivor 1.0, and now they're suggesting without him Soul Survivor 2.0.
I'm not sure it's even 0.0s though, is it? Because from the point of view of that church, it's an ongoing. There's been a rupture of leadership.
Sure.
But I have no knowledge of the long history of Soul Survivor Watford. I don't know what happens in St Albans Diocese. I guess what's interesting from our point of view almost is the reaction to the language of. So one quote I wrote down was that the bid described Soul Survivor Watford as a church planting church, track record of planting and revitalisation to be intentionally accelerated and boosted under new leadership. Missional engine was the phrase that stood out to me as well. The idea of that there is this church in the diocese that's growing, and so that's kind of in some sense an example. And that's where I don't know quite what language to use, because I don't really understand. I think people think that it's a more straightforwardly Soul Survivor asked for money and it was given money, and it's because it's the diocese. It's
less clear.
So I don't want to speak to that. But I find it interesting that the sense of the church that is still called Soul Survivor, and until quite really very recently was being led by Mike Pilavachi.
Yeah, exactly.
Is being referred to as a model that people like you and I are reacting to it with this sense of hurt, like a raw nerve has been touched.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes back to time, without knowing the first thing at all about because it could be that outside of that funding bid, St Albans are doing really brilliant things. So I don't know. They could be doing, for all I know.
And we're not criticising.
Yeah.
So rather than getting...
But it's interesting that on that wider picture of
Yeah.
people who've been affected or have in the past been affected by Soul Survivor, there's still that sense of like raw hurt around it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know whether the question is, well, what do we as a hurt generation, let's say, do with that sense of sadness? Or is it, because it's tempting to think, well, I want the leaders of churches to say something about it, something pastorally. If you're a big name evangelical, could you say something to that wider cohort? But maybe I shouldn't want them to. Maybe, I don't know. Why do I care?
Well, why do we care? So when the news broke, New Wine distanced themselves and said we had nothing to do
The
with
original Mike
Soul
Pilavachi investigation.
Yeah, exactly. So there was, and J. John was saying, this is all rubbish, he's a great guy, we're good mates. There was this real sort of denial of reality. I made the initial video, which I didn't notice grew. I didn't look at my YouTube channel and I thought, wow, it's had like 6,000 views or something, and I had no idea. But the reason I did it was just say this was my experience in his flat, with the promises made, and it wasn't just him. This was my experience of Soul Survivor as a whole.
Yeah.
Now, why I think I'm angry, and I'm frustrated, but actually I'm also just bamboozled, is I thought it made clear, and a lot of people had made clear, it wasn't just Pilavachi, it was the culture he created and that was perpetuated and supported by a wider group, including the Church of England. Now, what's happened is, rather than acknowledging, oh yeah, we were supportive of this guy, we made him a reverend, he got an MBE, various other things, and he was massively supported in this successful work, and we put everything under the rug because he was doing a successful job. Rather than acknowledging all of that and saying, actually, Soul Survivor is a product of this, hey, but it was all right, actually, we should still crack on.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
It's a brand, it's a be real. It's a be real thing for me. And you can't just scapegoat Pilavachi and say, now he's out the picture. I mean, I'm sure there would be tons of people who would be angry at me saying it, but bless him. Like, what's he up to now? I've got friends who are veterans, right? Quite a number. And when they stop serving in big old jobs, they feel like they've fallen off a cliff.
Yeah.
This guy hasn't just fallen off a cliff. Yes, the cliff was made by him in a number of ways, but he's been shoved off it. And I sort of think, well, even the Church of England, who are saying, oh, Soul Survivor is a great missional thing, a bit of him is probably like, oh, thank God, at least they're seeing some value in it, right? His last picture on Instagram was a picture of a ropey-looking apple tree. But we can't just allow, oh, well, he's out the picture now, let's crack on. My joke, I don't know if I said it to you, was one Sunday morning in a year or so, hey, we've got a special guest. He's back. You know, like, what does this look like? He needs care. You know, just because he's been abusive, he still requires care, I think, is how I view, the gospel. What doesn't need to happen is this all kind of crap that I'm hearing from lots of Christians at the moment, which is legacy. Instead, we just need honesty. So that's why I've got angry.
We were saying earlier that it's complicated with tenses if you're doing, because the book does a lot of like going back to my own memories.
Yeah.
I sort of say, well, this, and I haven't kept on top of how it is now, but then it is still happening now. What I'm also reminded of is, in a completely different context, I was talking to someone recently about the phrase black box thinking, and it came from a book that this person had read by Matthew Said. So I don't know the book,
right?
But the concept my friend was sharing with me was that, like, if there's a plane crash, you need the black box. You need to find out what actually went wrong. You can't just say, well, that was bad pilot. You need to find the black box to find out what went wrong with the system and the full picture and all the details. And we weren't talking about church. We weren't talking about charismatic faith. But my first reaction was, oh, that's quite important for church culture, I think, to not just say, well, it must have been the pilot's fault. You need to know if you found the black box and really thought it all through. I guess the book is trying to be a little bit of setting aside the named individuals who might need to be investigated. What was actually like to just be a kid in that context, and that's kind of part of the black box to find out what the whole system and structure was. So your sense of anger about how things are now, however they are, in a sense, I don't want to speak to it because all my thoughts kept just going back to like 2002, roughly. But I do have this thought in the back of my mind about just the whole thing of like, well, how have we found the black box? Did we go looking for it? Like, really properly, have we sorted out?
Great.
Not just the investigations. It's but the theology, like what do we all actually believe?
I mean, a mate of mine who I've made through sort of having a WhatsApp group of about 60 people who are hurt, essentially. Kev sort of says, well, how on earth is the church still called Soul Survivor? So that's the level in which he would go to. And to be honest, I kind of agree. It's the damage that has been caused has so far really gone unseen. A report that cost far too much money to write by a barrister there's not been restitution in that. The advice given is being ignored if we are going to look at the value in it. And so now we're left with this sort of championing of something you speak of some value in Soul Survivor, but on the whole it's not been massively valuable to you.
I mean, I think I wanted to think about why we all cared so much, like why.
Yeah.
In a sense, things hurt when they go sour because you felt they were really good. So that's worth honouring in some way. I wanted to try to write kind of from within inside charismatic practice. I can remember saying to someone once, like the charismatic church needs to think through whether those practices are safe. Like what is the thinking behind things that charismatics do?
Yeah.
And my friend said, well, it'd be hard to do because the people who are really on board and love the charismatic church would find it difficult to think critically. The people who are always outside it and don't like the charismatic church are going to find it difficult to think critically. And I had that in mind in this kind of, I want people to get a sense of why it would feel like it matters so much, or why you might think, I missed this, but I'm sceptical of it.
Yeah.
On that level of just the practice of worshipping in a particular way, or doing prayer ministry in a particular way, or just how you think about yourself in relation to God. So although there's been a focus on Soul Survivor, it's for me. It's I want to think about that bigger, or not bigger, but more diffuse.
Yeah.
Culture.
You talk a lot about sort of your experience as a teenager, which I just found very useful just to examine my own experience. You then finish the book sort of looking at how it sort of left you as an adult. And maybe that's how we sort of start finishing our conversation in some respects. And I don't think it's worth, don't give away the parts
leave
that
the
you
book
wrote
to
because
read.
it's so eloquent. And I think the way that you wrote it would speak more eloquently than we have a quick chat about it. But how's it, and maybe you can make it current rather than just applying it to what you've written. But through your experience, through your growth, through your study, through your relationships, how do you view you've kind of been left? And Soul Survivor, the festivals were maybe, like you said, a mountaintop within the year, but we talk about it within charismatic sort of experience generally, which is I blur the lines a lot in my conversations as well. But how you left now, and we spoke about the hinterland or the that spot, sort of, we sort of maybe whether it's outside the fence or however we'd view it. But where you left, what's the...
Yeah, so would it be pretentious to quote the end of Middlemarch?
Yeah, excessively. Yeah, go ahead. So, it's insightful.
Yeah. There's a moment at the end of George Eliot's novel Middlemarch, which is the kind of moment where, like, this is not an original thought of mine to bring up this quote. So Caitlin Beattie's book Celebrities for Jesus, she ends on this quote.
Right, okay.
I've had just casual conversations where people kind of go, it's all about those last few lines of Middlemarch, isn't it? And you kind of go, yeah, it is.
Right, okay.
And I think all the context that you need is that for people who haven't read Middlemarch, that's fine, of course. There are a whole bunch of characters in Middlemarch who have really big ideals, and they have some kind of dream for what they want to achieve. And some of it is more material, like someone who wants to make their fortune, and some of it is more kind of spiritual, like this character Dorothea kind of wants to not exactly be a history maker, but she kind of wants to arise above the pettiness and the silliness of life and kind of achieve something in some...
Sure.
I'm not quite putting it into words, but she's
a grand ideal.
She's kind of this dreamer.
Yeah, okay.
And has this arc of like it doesn't work. You go for it and you try to achieve it, and just, things go wrong. Life happens. And none of the characters who have these big ideals achieve their ideals.
Yeah.
But some of them end up in a different way of living where they've kind of settled into more just you do the best you can in the place where you are.
Yeah.
And so the novel ends with this quote that everyone loves, where George Eliot says, of this character, Dorothea, her full nature, like that river of which Cyrus broke the strength, spent itself in channels which had no great name on the earth. But the effect of her being on those around her was incalculably diffusive, for the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. I was thinking about it, I almost hadn't noticed the echo of like unhistoric with wanted to be a history maker. The growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and all most of us can do is unhistoric acts.
Yeah.
But if it adds to the growing good of the world, what else can we do? I think that's kind of one of the themes of the book is like, yeah, what else can we do but the ordinary? I don't know. Was that what you were angling for, or
no?
Is there anything else to say?
It's you. I wanted. Yeah. I think. I don't think people are ready to put to bed the idea that they won't be a history maker. My wife criticises me quite a lot. She says, "Sam, why is it every job you do has to include all of you?" When I worked in an agency, which was a global agency, she was frustrated that I was frustrated that it wasn't perfect. It wasn't fully everything I wanted it to be. She gets really frustrated with me. She didn't grow up in this world at all. And she thinks I'm bonkers for being like that. Now, is that because I still think I was promised this thing, or I even had people prophesying it over me? Or is it because I'm someone that really loves people and is curious about their story?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between those two things?
And I said a minute ago that people should get to feel proud of themselves for the things that they do well.
Right? Yeah, you said, exactly.
Because I do think that's important. I still think it's pretentious to be called doctor. Nonetheless, like, I don't know whether it will have been on camera that we had this moment. I'm like, I don't want to be called Dr. Sixsmith.
I'm not sure.
I feel weird about being called Dr. Sixsmith. At the same time, like, finishing my PhD took a really long time.
Yeah.
So I am quite proud of myself that I did it.
Quite.
Like, I finished a thing. It was hard, and I did it. So when I say, like, unhistoric acts and the ordinary life, I hope that's compatible with, like...
I'm just going to tell the dog to be quiet.
That's okay.
Be quiet. Get on your bed. Bed. Never get
all of the listeners' dogs are going to be running into the corner.
Never get a little yappy dog. That's my advice. But yeah, sorry.
Because part of what I've questioned in my mind, I think, is the needing the worship leaders to be humble.
Yeah.
When I kind of think, well, if you're good at something like playing guitar, maybe do it as well as you can. Maybe do it really. Maybe feel good about the fact that you've learned to play an instrument, which is quite hard. Like. Yeah. I don't know whether that fits in with your thought.
And this is kind of, so the Middlemarch thing is, there's a bit of a defeatist nature about it, at least if we're comparing it with the
I mean, maybe you need to have read Middlemarch.
Okay, and I'm far too lazy to have done that, and we've just taken the
taken the quote.
True.
But I think it's compatible. Like,
it is, but it becomes self-effacing. So there's a danger that we become. This is the stuff. This is the stuff which I'm trying to continually look at, because all kids want to be an astronaut, or they want to be a firefighter, or they want to be a teacher, or they want to be a YouTuber. They all have.
And
the
they're not all
aspiration.
going to get to do it.
No, they're not all going to get to do it, and the thing that used to drive me mad was, how on earth can this be the David generation? There was only one. This makes no... And I've always... I read the Bible as these characters. I can't compare my life to them. God chose them, and also God chose them to tell their story to us. And their story was told in a certain way that we would identify with. Not to then attempt to mimic, but to understand the story of his involvement in their lives, in that context. So to reduce all of that into, you're all David.
The David generation, yeah.
Or,
where in practice,
like,
you need to work out, and I can imagine it's like, if you're a secondary school teacher or something, how do you get teenagers to think through, what are they good at, what's realistic? How do you balance being ambitious for something with recognising that barely anyone makes it in that career, so you're going to have to about like that.
So even,
but that kind of thing is part of what I mean about the ordinariness of life.
But equally, when I was like 4 or whatever, I'm left-handed. Grew up left-handed. I was given a right-hand pair of scissors to cut, and I still can't cut paper now because I was given a right hand.
I've been the teacher with the kid kind of going.
Yeah, exactly.
Nightmare.
So I think the most reductive understanding of the Middlemarch quote would be to say the right-handed scissors in the left hand. The most ideal version of the Soul Survivor idea is, with your right-handed scissors and being right-handed, you get to cut something that goes on a really fancy wall or whatever.
It's going to be in the Tate Modern or something.
Yeah. Now, I don't think. It's so weird because, again, if we take it back to the gospel, it's just upside down. And that isn't upside down necessarily. Whether we were a chosen generation or not, we're all chosen generations, and we all have that opportunity to be within God, the community of the Trinity, and be part of the dance or whatever language.
But there's going to be some people listening to the podcast. Video, whatever, for whom that will be like, Christian speak. Can't do that.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
I can't.
And you deal with that really well in your
it.
book.
Like,
you deal with that really well. I mean, the way that you talk about, I'd love to, but I'm not sure if I could. I would love to sing that again, but I'm not sure if I could. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you do that really well.
And maybe everyone needs like a bit of a mixture of at this
You're the
point
first
I'm
person
going
I think
for
that's
it.
criticised me for Christian speak. That's really depressing.
Sorry, but it's not a criticism in the sense that it's
no, it's good. You criticise me. No, it's good. It's valid.
I'm not telling you what you ought to do. I mean, it's one of the range of possible reactions.
No,
and
totally
it's just like
realistic and valid.
It's where I'm at the moment. Like, right. It kind of makes me
I
go.
just made you recoil.
I mean, it's not very articulate, is it? To just kind of go as a piece of language. Where did we come from with that point?
Well, I was
before I kiboshed it.
Because I was saying, what's the validity in being called a whatever generation?
Yes.
So sort of to finish off with where we started.
Yeah.
The Soul Survivor generation are confused. You wanted to, you did want to tidy it up with that quote, and I'm not letting you. Essentially, is what's happening.
Yeah. No, but that's great. I was going to read the quote and then be like, what do I say now?
No. But that's, we're still left.
It's worth leaving it as complicated.
And well, but equally, I don't think the aspiration should be being unhistoric. I don't think the aspiration should be to be a worship leader. For goodness sake, don't want to be a worship leader. I don't even think the aspiration should be wanting to be a rock star with a lowercase r on a stage pretending to do worship in a performative way. I don't think that's the aspiration. So what is the aspiration? What is if any of it, if there was a modicum of truth in any of it, then what is the promise? Of
the sort of David generation type stuff.
Soul Survivor generation. Yeah. What is then the promise? And
that's probably the point at which I do run out of words and would want to hear back from.
But you closed it well in the book. You closed it well in the book, much better than I'm doing now. And I'm kind of just asking a rhetorical question in some ways. But that is where we're stuck. And if the C of E think that a bunch of numbers of kids coming together, where actually there really wasn't much competition, as being valid, I think we need to ask that. Whether you call it the black box, which is a great analogy, or whether it's what is this? What happens? How do you complete this game?
Yeah, it's maybe something like how do we as individuals think of ourselves, or if we are doing ministry, running churches, think of people in general.
Yeah.
Not just as here are the young people, here are the adults, here are the slightly older adults, but all of those people are on a life story.
Yeah.
And just as we can't go back and have different teenagerhoods, the teenagers in the youth group are going to have some kind of later adulthood. And how do we? What? I'm running out of words. But there's.
No, I think you're right though.
Yeah, how do we think realistically about that sort of life as a story in that way, not just as categories of people?
And based on that thinking, that's why you wrote the book in the way that you did, right?
They're kind of looking back and here we are now.
And story.
Yeah. It's easy to sort of think, gosh, how exciting the young people are all gathering together. They're going to change the world.
Yeah.
It's easy to think that about young people because we've got older and now we're tired and sad.
And we haven't changed the world.
Yeah. Probably they won't either.
Well, look at it now.
So how do we think about ourselves?
Yeah.
Or bring up young people if we're in that opportunity? Or how do we support the older generation?
Yeah. Totally. Where's the hope?
Who've been through more of life.
Yeah.
Which is hard. We haven't talked about in that direction,
no,
but
haven't.
It's hard.
Yeah.
How do we not ignore all of that complexity to life? Which I'm sure there are people in their parish churches who are being realistic about the fact that you can have a christening one day and a funeral the next day, and that's
amazing.
That's how life is.
And
so I'm not saying it's not happening.
No, but
just from personal experience of kind of emerging through these churches.
And I've worked in advertising for a while. The advertising at the moment for the Church of England is shocking because it's not recognising or saying that at all. It's just saying, hey, this is missional. Let's focus on the young people. I didn't want to have the last word. Go on, quick.
What is the last word?
Buy your book.
Well, buy it and but then tell me what your thoughts are.
Great.
Let's leave it open-ended.
Okay. How do people get in touch with you?
I could be found on Twitter, or X, Blue Sky.
Yeah. And I'll put all of the things in the description.
All of the things, Substack, I think.
Yeah.
Nominally.
Hopefully it turns into a bit of the conversation that you're wanting.
Or if not, not necessarily with me, because I've just put the book out there, but with each other, with whoever you need to talk to kind of take that mess of thoughts forward.
Great.
That could be it's open-ended. It's all questions. Over to everyone else.
Yeah. So please follow and like and subscribe to me and to Lucy, and thanks for your time. And yeah, let us know in the comments. And actually, if you take part in the comments as well,
yeah.
I don't know how. Yeah, you'll
sure
people will. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So yeah, please be part of this. The conversation shouldn't stop. Thank you.